Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Hey, welcome to Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 45. Up to 45 episodes. It's Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. If this is the first time you're joining the show, glad to have you here. Glad that you found the content. If you're returning from another episode or some other content that you saw, glad to see you returning. Always great to see all the people getting their fix of cyber threat intelligence. So, with that being said, if you need to grab a snack or a drink or something to get you through the show, make sure you run and go do that before we keep going. And also, if you want to get the articles that we cover or some other articles that we also think are important, then make sure to check out our website, cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com, and you'll be able to find all that information there. With that being said, let's go ahead and flip over to my screen and get into the articles. All right, so first article, Windows AI feature that screenshots everything labeled as a security disaster. Microsoft is about to launch a new AI-powered recall feature that screenshots everything you do on your PC. Recall is part of the new Copilot Plus PCs that are debuting on June 18th, but experts who have tested the feature are already warning that recall could be a disaster for cybersecurity. So these PCs are debuting in a couple weeks here. Recall is designed to use local AI models to screenshot everything you do or see or do on your computer, and then give you the ability to search and retrieve anything in seconds. There's even an explorable timeline that you can scroll through. Everything in Recall is designed to remain local and private on device, so no data is used to train Microsoft's AI models. Despite Microsoft's promises of a secure and encrypted recall experience, cybersecurity expert Kevin Beaumont has found that the AI-powered feature has some potential security flaws. Beaumont, who previously worked at Microsoft in 2020, has been testing out Recall over the past week and discovered that the feature stores data in a database in plain text. That can make it trivial for an attacker to use malware to extract the database and its contents. So one thing that's interesting here is that the idea of, well, certainly plain text. Anytime that you have sensitive data or potentially sensitive data and it's stored in plain text, that's always a no-no, especially at the enterprise level. Now they're saying that this is just stored on the local device, but that doesn't mean that it's secure. A lot of times the local device gets exploited or gets compromised, and then if it's just in plain text, it's very easy to find where this stuff is stored and then just be able to access it. So that is quite interesting to essentially be screen capturing everything that you're doing. That is, I don't know if that makes me feel so good. The fear is that Recall makes it easier for malware and attackers to steal information. Absolutely. Info stealer Trojans already exist to steal credentials and information from PCs, and hackers currently distribute this type of malware to steal and sell information. Recall enables threat actors to automate scraping everything that you've ever looked at within seconds, says Beaumont. Yeah, if you can figure out how to interact with the database or however things are stored, then it's very easy to just compromise a system, run a script, and then exfiltrate all that data in probably a few seconds. Because pictures in general, especially like screenshots, don't take a ton of data, or they're not large files a lot of times. And so an attacker could literally just take that data very quickly and run off with it. So I think that is certainly a concern for end users, for consumers, but also in businesses. If you have this feature enabled and you're accessing customer data or sensitive data, PII, employee information, even proprietary data for your company, that is certainly going to be a concern. Microsoft maintains recall as an optional experience and that it has built privacy controls into the feature. You can disable certain URLs and apps, and recall won't store any material that's protected with digital rights management tools. So I instinctively, as I read that, I thought of when you first install a Windows operating system these days, and it has like the feature toggle option, and it's like for collecting information. And it's like, do you want to collect all the information or just some of the information? There's no like all or none option. And that's newer a newer strategy, I believe, with Microsoft, because that did not exist in things like Windows XP, where they just weren't collecting as much information on you. But I think this is definitely a concern anywhere you're going to use it. And it'll be interesting to see who uses it, if it is indeed very easy to turn off or configure or anything like that. Sometimes it feels like you configure services like this, or you tune them, and then they still collect the data. So we'll see. I mean, obviously Microsoft has a pretty strong foothold with their operating system. So we will see what happens with that. Next article, NIST turns to IT consultants to help clear NVD backlog.
You're the lucky winner. Yes.
Wrong button, but that's cool. That's cool. Facing a growing backlog of reported flaws, NIST has extended a commercial contract with an outside consultancy to help it get on top of its National Vulnerability Database, the NVD. NIST has an ongoing 5-year, $125 million contract with Maryland-based Analogence for various bits of IT and security-related work. It is always amazing to me how many companies pick these random names that are just like ridiculous. That deal was amended. There's a PDF late last month to include support specifically for clearing the NVD backlog, which has been growing beyond the U.S. government agency's ability to process submissions since February. So we've actually talked about this on this show before. And the idea is that if you're not familiar with the National Vulnerability Database, basically it's just a database where there's all these different vulnerabilities. They track CVEs and all those kinds of things. So you can just go there and you can search for vulnerabilities on specific software or things like that. And one of the issues with this was that they were just getting so many submissions because there's a ton of vulnerabilities out there, and they were not able to actually go through and vet those. So basically they just build up a backlog or a queue of these vulnerabilities that have to be reviewed and vetted to make sure that they're legitimate. And they just created this massive backlog. And that's a huge issue for anybody in cybersecurity or that is looking to research vulnerabilities, because there might be something submitted, but it's not approved yet. So you just can't go in there and search for it. There's no CVE possibly assigned to it. And it creates all these kinds of issues as far as that process. According to the agency's statement last week, it hopes to reach its pre-February processing rate of CVEs within the next few months. NIST predicted it should be caught up and back to processing current CVEs by the end of the fiscal year. Hopefully, because that is impactful. As of last month, more than 93% of vulnerabilities submitted since February 12th remain unanalyzed, threat intelligence firm VulnCheck reported recently. So 93%, that is a ton of the vulnerabilities. That's almost all of them. For reference, VulnCheck notes, as of May 23rd, there have been 12,720 fresh vulnerabilities submitted to the NVD since February 12th. And obviously that's a lot of unanalyzed flaws. So I'm not sure what 93% of 12,720 is, but that's a lot. That's a lot. So yeah, they need to get this under control, because I've used that database in all of my cybersecurity jobs. I'm sure if you work in cybersecurity, you probably use that database as well, and possibly in IT and other positions too, because it just has a lot of valuable information that you can use to making sure that your organization and your network and your systems are secure. So get back on it, NIST. Next article, Atlassian Confluence high severity bug allows code execution.
No!
Research team at SonicWall Capture Labs has discovered a remote code execution vulnerability in the Atlassian Confluence data center and server. The vulnerability, identified as CVE 2024-21683, has a high CVSS score of 8.3 out of 10, so that's pretty high, and allows an unauthenticated threat actor the ability to execute arbitrary code. In order to leverage the vulnerability, a cyber attacker must have network access to the vulnerable system and possess the privilege to add new macro languages. So there's a little bit of barrier there. To exploit the vulnerability, the attacker can upload a forged JavaScript language file containing malicious code to the location configure code macro, and then there's an option to add a new language according to the researchers. SonicWall has released 2 signatures for its customers for this. And then they also recommend that users upgrade their instance to the latest available versions due to the role that Confluence Server can play in maintaining an organization's knowledge base and other critical information. So just for awareness, Atlassian, basically on, I think it's on all their products, definitely on the major ones, they have a cloud version. So you just run it in the cloud, it's SaaS-based, that kind of thing. And then they also have an on-premise version, which is the server version, or I guess not necessarily even on-premise because you could host it in the cloud. It would be kind of weird to just not get the cloud version. But basically it's, an ISO or an installer, and then you can just host that yourself, essentially. So those are the 2 versions. This is only affecting the one that you host yourself. It is not affecting the SaaS version according to this article. And if it was, you wouldn't be able to upgrade the version anyways. So I guess that would fall onto Atlassian. So they probably have already upgraded it. Next article, Cox fixed an API auth pass exposing millions of modems to attacks. Cox Communication has fixed an authorization bypass vulnerability that enabled remote attackers to abuse exposed backend APIs to reset millions of Cox-supplied modem settings and steal customer-sensitive personal information.
No!
If you don't know who Cox is the largest private broadband company in the U.S., providing internet, television, and phone services over fiber-powered networks to almost 7 million homes and businesses across more than 30 states. So basically, they're an ISP. That's who they are. Bug bounty hunter Sam Curry discovered the security flaw and found that successful exploitation gave threat actors a similar set of permissions as an ISP tech support. It also says, by exploiting the authentication bypass vulnerability, malicious actors can look for a Cox customer using their name, phone number, email address, or account number via the exposed APIs. There's a quote here. It says, these series of vulnerabilities demonstrated a way in which a fully external attacker with no prerequisites could have executed commands and modified the settings of millions of modems, accessing any business customer's PII, and gained essentially the same permissions of an ISP support team, Curry said. So one of the things that's interesting to me, or that comes to mind in this article, is if you are able to get control of a router, of a modem in a regular customer's environment or a business environment, and you're able to modify settings, so DNS settings, DHCP settings, whatever, right? Those kinds of settings. And you can essentially maybe create a man-in-the-middle attack or do something where you're modifying where that traffic is going. That is certainly a concern. And so I think that ISPs definitely have a responsibility to make sure that their gear is updated and that there's no weird things going on. There's no vulnerabilities in their APIs or anything like that, because again, in this connected world, that ISP is kind of a critical piece of your life, of your connection for your internet. Because without that, what do you do? And also all your search traffic and all those kinds of things go through that ISP. So yeah, it's one of those interesting things where I wonder, going in the future, especially how those providers, those ISPs, if that starts to maybe work towards like a critical infrastructure designation. Because again, they're very important. It's not like the power plant necessarily, or a water sanitization plant, something like that, because it's different, right, as far as the impact. But we're so connected in today's world that a ISP, their importance in this world is significant. If they go down, then that can affect millions of customers. What did it say? 7 million in this case? And so obviously there's a whole bunch of other ISPs out there, but it's definitely food for thought. It's an interesting thought that maybe going into the future we will get there, and they will be considered something like critical infrastructure. I don't know. It's just a thought that comes to mind, because if you work in an ISP, you are critical to a lot of people. You're not just a normal tech support. Like you have massive impact if you mess up a configuration or you take down a network. Remember when we saw AWS go down several years ago? Maybe you don't, but whenever those major cloud providers go down too, that's a huge issue. So interesting. Next article, 361 million stolen accounts leaked on Telegram added to HIBP. Massive trove of 361 million email addresses from credentials stolen by password stealing malware and credential stuffing attacks and from data breaches was added to Have I Been Pwned data breach notification service, allowing anyone to check if their accounts have been compromised. Cybersecurity researchers collected these credentials from numerous Telegram cybercrime channels where the stolen data is commonly leaked to the channel's users to build reputation and subscribers. Stolen data is usually leaked as username and password combinations, usually stolen via credential stuffing attacks or data breaches. Username and passwords, along with the URL associated with them, stolen via password stealing malware, and raw cookies stolen via password stealing malware. Here's some screenshots for it. Researchers who asked Bleeping Computer to remain anonymous shared 122 gigabytes of credentials with Troy Hunt, the owner of Have I Been Pwned, collected from many Telegram channels. So 122 gigabytes. It's pretty big trove of credentials. It says Hunt said that he utilized sites' password reset forms to confirm that many leaked email addresses are correctly associated with the website listed in the stolen credentials. Hunt could not confirm the password, as that would require him to log into the account, which would be illegal. So it's always interesting to see these massive dumps of passwords and information. If you're working in cybersecurity, it's not always a bad idea to monitor some of this stuff, these dark web areas, these Telegram channels, and kind of obscure your identity, of course, so you don't get tracked back. But a lot of the stuff that you're going to want to see is definitely it's going to come from these channels. So very interesting always. All right, next article here. Crooks threaten to leak 2.9 billion records of personal info. Billions of records detailing people's personal information may soon be dumped online after being allegedly obtained from a Florida firm that handles background checks and other requests for folks' private info. Criminal gang that goes by the handle USDOD put the database up for sale for $3.5 million on an underworld forum in April, and rather incredibly claimed the trove included 2.9 billion records on all US, Canadian, and British citizens. Pilfered information is said to include individuals' full names, addresses, and address history going back at least 3 decades, social security numbers, and people's parents, siblings, and relatives, some of whom have been dead for nearly 20 years. According to US DoD, this info was not scraped from public sources, though there may be duplicate entries for people in the database. So obviously a lot of data. When we're looking at critical data, this is why it's important to understand what kind of data that you're processing, what your business is, because if you are working for a background check company, you're going to process a lot more sensitive data than you would if you were working for just some random company, even like, let's say a Walmart, which is just a massive kind of super center store, grocery store, clothing store kind of thing here in the US. Well, actually, they have a lot of locations, but if that's what they are, if you're not familiar with them. And when you go to shop there, you don't give your work history and like all of that information. You pay for whatever you have. Maybe you swipe your credit card, something like that, and then that's it. With a background check resource, background check company, companies are submitting a lot of confidential or personal data to those companies because they need to validate what you're saying and check that. So they, get a lot of information about people. And so when those companies are breached, it's never a good thing because they just have even more access than you would, than just any normal company. And when we saw, this was several years ago, this was 2014 or was it 2016? It was a while ago, right? In the United States, a lot of the contractors and services entities that handled the clearances, security clearances for people here in the United States, they were breached. And so a lot of that data was exfiltrated. And that is even more sensitive data, but it's still the same kind of thing where it's a lot of this background information. Because then think of when you're asked like security questions or something, and it's like, what is your, it asks you, what is your mother's maiden name? What was an address that you lived at? There's all kinds of things that can result from these kinds of attacks and these kind of exfiltration of data and those kind of sources. So again, interesting targets for people to go after, but definitely juicy targets because they have a lot of information that can lead to a lot of other attacks and strategies around that. And yeah, so protect your data. Know what kind of data you have too. Know how to identify that there's attack. We talk about this a lot on this show because there's a lot of attacks, obviously. Understand that incident response process and how you can improve your overall security so that you keep getting better, you keep improving your defenses and your ability to identify when issues happen and getting those contained and removed or eradicated, and then keep learning, keep improving those processes. Never stop. This is one area that never stops evolving. So with that being said, that's the last article for today. Again, this is Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 45. It's Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. And make sure that if you want to see the articles that we covered, you go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com, and you'll be able to find all the information there. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cybertraining Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. Cybertrainingpro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, Why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.